From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. We begin in Chile, where Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick is in Parliament being questioned about the death of Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca. Indigenous lawmaker Emilia Nullado is expected to question Chadwick on the details surrounding Catrillanca's murder. The young Mapuche man was killed on November 14th by security forces, sparking outrage and several protests. On Monday, a court revoked the preventive detention of 2 police officers accused of taking part in the killing. Our correspondent in Santiago, Paola Dragnik, brings us more.
The Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick is appearing in Congress to be questioned regarding the behavior of the police forces, also known as carabineros, and particularly that of the Jungle Command in the community of Temucucuy, where Mapuche member Camilo Catrillanca was killed. He is the 16th Mapuche murderer in Chile since the return to democracy. This Tuesday, the Interior Minister will be questioned by the Mapuche lawmaker Emilia Nullado, that has planned to start the round of questions with an introduction in the Mapuche language, something that has spread great expectations not only among lawmakers, but also among human rights organizations that have arrived to the Parliament to listen to her questions.
And using Twitter, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arraza rejected the declarations of United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the supposed pulling of public funds by the Venezuelan government. He said that the reaction of Pompeo against military cooperation between Russia and Venezuela is not only disrespectful, it is cynical. The U.S. has at least 800 military bases in 70 countries. Today, 75 out of the 107 United States programs security cooperation operate in Latin America. He also pointed out it is unusual for the United States government to question our sovereign right to cooperation in defense and security with other countries, when Donald Trump publicly threatened us with military intervention. If they want to cooperate, they should lift their sanctions against Venezuela. Finally, he added, if they are so concerned about United States waste, they should review their immense and unjustified military budget of more than $674 million in 2019. I'm sure that 15 million people without access to public health in the United States can suggest fairer destinations for those funds. And our correspondent Hansel Oro in Moscow explains the Kremlin's reaction to these comments.
Kremlin Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov has said that the recent tweets by United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo were very inappropriate and of poor diplomatic choice. On Twitter, Pompeo strongly criticized stationing Russian bombers at the Venezuelan Simon Bolivar International Airport. The aircraft, including 2 nuclear-capable bombers, flew across the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean to land in Venezuela. In response, Peskov said that the United States could very well feed the entire African continent with all the money it spends on weaponry. In fact, the U.S. defense budget for 2019 is expected to be $716 billion, $6 billion more than when compared with this year's budget. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the United States is one of the biggest arms sellers in the world, with 57% of all arms sales coming from the country. The United States has also expressed its disapproval of the latest investment deal between Venezuela and Russia. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro visited Moscow last week and agreed to support a more multilateral world with his counterpart, President Vladimir Putin.
We thank Hansel for that report. And moving on, Otto Sonnenholzner has been chosen as Ecuador's new vice president. The National Assembly chose him with 94 votes in favor out of 128 assembly members. There were 27 against and 7 abstentions. Sonnenholzner is a well-known radio presenter from Guayaquil. He has no formal links to any political party. However, several figures from Ecuador's traditional right-wing parties have expressed support for him. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has the details.
Hello, good morning. We are at the National Assembly where the plenary session just finished, and now Otto Sonne-Hosner was elected by the National Assembly as the new Vice President of Ecuador with 90 votes in favor. Otto Sonne-Hosner was elected as the new Vice President of Ecuador. Also, the Citizen Abolition Movement rejected the list, and also they voted against the new Vice President of Ecuador. Now, Elizabeth Cabezas appointed him as the new Vice President, despite Moreno is not now in the country. It's all for now. Back to you at the studio.
Thank you, Denise, for that report. And students continue to protest across France the day after President Emmanuel Macron announced concessions to the Yellow Vest movement. Hundreds of high school students have marched in Paris against the education reforms. These reforms include changes to the university admission system. Students are angry that their concerns are not being addressed. And high school students have also protested in the south of the country, in the city of Montpellier. Young people staged a performance to denounce the detention of dozens of fellow students. Hundreds of students have also rallied in Marseille. A young French protester said he plans to file a lawsuit after his hand was blown off. He was apparently injured whilst picking up a grenade at the Yellow Vest protest last Saturday. And also in France, at least 2 people were killed and another 11 seriously wounded when a gunman burst into a Christmas market in Strasbourg. French Interior Minister Christophe Castaner said that the suspect was known to police for criminal activities. Police have locked down the area as the shooter is still on the run. The shooting coincides with a meeting of EU leaders in the French city. The British Prime Minister Theresa May is touring European capitals in a desperate effort to win concessions and save her Brexit deal. May arrived in Berlin the day after she postponed a vote in the British Parliament, because it was clear that the deal would be rejected. There was an awkward moment when the car door got stuck and she couldn't get out to shake hands with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has the details.
The European Union is preparing for a no-deal Brexit as its chief negotiator, Michael Barnier, in a private meeting expressed the increased risk of this happening, and France warned its fellow European Union members that they should be planning for this kind of scenario. Now, Michael Barnier's warnings came in a private meeting with the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker and fellow commissioners. Jean-Claude Juncker earlier in the day today had repeated the fact that Theresa May's visit of European capitals today, that her search for a kind of wiggle room on the Brexit deal that's already been agreed would be in vain, that was the deal that was had been offered, that would not be renegotiated. Theresa May, as we know, yesterday cancelled a vote that was set to happen today in the British Parliament on this deal. She was set to have a massive defeat with over 100 of her own MPs voting against it. Now what looks like increasingly desperate and frantic attempts by her to look for a way out descended into farce really today when in her lunchtime, just before her lunchtime meeting with Angela Merkel in Germany, she was unable to get out of the car, and you had these rather farcical scenes. Earlier in the day, she had been in Holland, meeting with the leader of Holland, an ally of Britain. But European officials have said that she should be, that is the deal on offer, that she should be dealing with them, not touring European capitals. Plus, she's facing increased pressure back at home amongst her own MPs, where the talk of a leadership of a vote of no confidence in her by her own party has increased again. So it does really look like the end game for Theresa May. She's running out of options. in order to have her Brexit strategy seems to be in tatters. And late this afternoon, we saw a declaration from her MP, one of a Conservative Party MP, Bill Cash, who says that the Prime Minister has reached the cliff edge of resignation. So things are looking very bad for Theresa May and her big Brexit plan.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. A court in Argentina has handed down prison sentences to 2 former Ford executives for their part in the dirty war conducted by the military dictatorship. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Roth, has more.
This is indeed an historic day in Argentina. A court has condemned former managers of the Ford multinational company for crimes against humanity. This is the first verdict of its kind, not only for collaboration with the dictatorship, but for direct involvement by the businessmen in these crimes. The case dealt with events 42 years ago, when 24 workers were kidnapped and tortured. Most of them were shop stewards at the Ford factory at General Pacheco. All this was proven during the hearings in the case, which began in December 2017. The Ford manager not only handed over the names of the workers, but their files with photos and other personal details. They let the security forces into the factory and supplied transportation to take the arrested workers away. The court decided unanimously that the sentences should be served in common prisons. Pedro Mueller, the former head of production at Ford, was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Hector Sibilla, the former head of security at the factory, received 12 years, while the army officer Santiago Riberos got 15 years.
We thank Sabrina for that report. Pro-immigration groups have protested at the border between Mexico and the United States. The activists gathered on a California beach near the fence separating both countries to protest the immigration policies pushed by President Donald Trump. And at the U.S. side of the border, dozens of leaders from different faiths were arrested over the weekend as they gathered there to show their support for migrants. The group said they brought together some 200 faith and indigenous leaders who represented diverse faiths, including Christian, Jewish, and Muslim. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's more than willing to take the blame for a partial government shutdown if he can't reach a deal with Democrats to fund his border wall. He says his long-promised U.S.-Mexico barrier will be built one way or the other. Trump was speaking at a White House meeting where he clashed with Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
we
tell you
disagree.
what, I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it.
Our correspondent Pablo Perez brings us the latest from the border.
We're at a place called Otay Mesa. This is near Tijuana on the Mexican state of Baja California, bordering the southern state of California of the United States. And to this point is where the some representatives of the migrant caravan are headed. In a few minutes they will arrive because there behind me there's the United States General Consulate, and the migrants, the Central Americans, are going to deliver a letter to the North American consul here, and they are attempting to ease their process for the ones that are asking for refugee or political asylum in the United States. That's something that has been very difficult lately because of the policies of the Donald Trump government that has lowered the number of applicants up to 30 a day when they usually were processing 100 or even more daily. Now they're only processing 30, and that's insufficient, because there's not only the migrants, the Central American migrants, but there's also a lot of people applying for refugee status here in Tijuana, people coming from all over the world. There are Russians, there are Africans, people from India that are trying to get into the United States through this entry port. So the migrants some of them are trying to do this in the legal way, but there is another way, that is crossing to the United States and getting detained by the Border Patrol, and then asking them, after turning themselves over, asking them to the authorities for the initiation of their refugee application. The CBP, the California Border Patrol, has said that over the last weeks they have detained over 2,000 Central Americans. That's a rise on the number of the people that is crossing illegally through the desert, walking through the desert, or aided by what they call coyotes. That's the people that charge for crossing the border illegally. And that surge on illegal crossing has been registered not only here in the border between Baja California and California, but all over the border between Mexico and the United States. That's indicating, according to certain analysts, that the migration itself is growing, and not only because it's not only shown on the migrant caravan, but on a surge all over the border.
And also in Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has announced that a new investment agreement will be signed with the United States, Canada, and Central American countries to tackle migration. He's also set to introduce a new oil production plan to address the issue of declining production. In 2013, the previous administration opened the Mexican energy sector to private investors. But AMLO has called the scheme a farce, as private companies haven't invested as much as they had promised.
It would mean investment. It would mean jobs. It would mean economic benefits. I am willing to travel, and there are about 10 daily flights to Washington and New York. It's no problem.
A gunman has opened fire in a cathedral in the Brazilian city of Campinas, killing at least 5 people before committing suicide. Brazilian media reports that the man entered the church while Mass was being celebrated and began shooting with a revolver and a pistol. The motive and identity of the shooter were not immediately known. It's Gender Day at the COP24, the Global Climate Conference, and to mark the occasion, Panos Caribbean has highlighted the need for gender-sensitive responses to the impacts of catastrophic weather events. While the effects of climate change are widely felt, women commonly face higher risk and greater burdens, particularly in situations of poverty. A video produced by Panos Caribbean highlights these human and social justice dimensions as seen through the lenses of leading Caribbean professionals and activists.
If that woman is a single income earner, then when there is a period of extreme weather, then the small resources that she does have, she has to work magic to continue to take care of the families.
If there is a flood or a hurricane and food is reduced or lost, by and large, women are responsible for feeding the children. So she has a differential role to play.
Because climate change affects food, it affects agriculture, it puts them at a disadvantage in being able to supply food to their family.
If she lives in rural Jamaica and happens also to be a farmer, she then has the additional challenge of taking care of the farm in addition to the household.
Meanwhile, the Caribbean has significantly boosted its ability to limit the ravages of climate change, thanks to a $2 million light detection and ranging system delivered by the U.S. government. The airborne technology will improve the region's capability to monitor and plan for physical changes to land and marine environments. The data will be used to provide detailed information of the region's coastal areas, reefs, and seafloor, as well as to produce flood maps. The International Monetary Fund is predicting economic growth for the Bahamas. As the country's economy continues to recover, GDP is projected to grow by over 2% in 2019. The Hubert Minnie's government has also narrowed the fiscal deficit, and Bahamas is now preparing to pilot a digital currency. The IMF recognizes the role of such new financial technologies in mitigating potential risks to the economy. Defense ministers from Latin America and the Caribbean have vowed to boost cooperation on tackling terrorism, making the commitment to do so at the Western Hemisphere counter-terrorism meeting in Washington. Areas of discussion included regional and international terror threats, terrorism, financing, and transnational criminality. The progress of new counter-terrorism strategies in the region was lauded.
Argentina has worked on reforming criminal laws to better prosecute terrorists. Trinidad and Tobago has established an interagency task force to gather terrorism-related intelligence that can be used as courtroom evidence.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. A fashion contest has been held in the capital of the Central African Republic. Miss Central Africa Beauty Contest disappeared from the country due to poverty and violence following the coup d'etat in 2013. During the contest, young women were surrounded by hundreds of people who saw them parade and wear African clothes. The country is one of the poorest in the world. UNICEF says 2 out of 3 children need humanitarian help. 3 suspects have gone on trial for the murder and kidnapping of 2 British citizens in South Africa. The suspects are accused of being involved in the killing of 2 elderly British botanists. The couple went missing in February and thought to be searched for rare plants, but they were found dead later. The trio are charged with murder, kidnapping, robbery, and contravening domestic counterterrorism laws. Thousands of Albanian students have protested in Tirana, demanding that the government lowers tuition fees and invests more in public education. Public university tuition fees range from a few hundred to almost $3,000 annually in Albania, where the average salary is about $400. And 1 in 3 young people end up employed, while many leave for better opportunities abroad. Protesters have so far refused talks with the Prime Minister, who urged them to open up for dialogue. In a new incident, Israeli troops have killed a Palestinian man on suspicion of car ramming. Israeli forces opened fire at the man after his car hit a police vehicle in the West Bank. In a separate case, another Palestinian driver was arrested. The incidents come as Israeli troops are searching for suspects who shot and wounded 7 Israelis outside a Jewish settlement earlier this week. In Tunisia, the National Coalition has launched a new political front. The party has gathered the basis of the Nida Tunis movement while bringing together new progressive forces.
The National Coalition was born of the Nida Tunis political party, a bloc led by Prime Minister Youssouf al-Shahed. This political party has conducted several surveys, this in a bid to launch a new political party open to new progressive forces.
The Prime Minister and members of the government are at the forefront of this project. Congress representatives are also supporting our project.
The National Coalition was once the main ally of the Al-Nashara movement, but now it seems destined to become its main adversary. The coalition is looking towards a new era of politics, but that could be brought to a halt by the Al-Nashra movement.
The coalition's battle with the Al-Nahda movement will be decisive, although this battle will be just a partial one, since the real battle involves the chief of state.
The National Coalition announced the objectives just before launching its project, which seeks to offer a fresh political option.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.